Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for coming tonight. As Irene introduced, my name is Armin Grigorian, and I work for a company called Property Start, which has been recently, we had a name change. It was called IDOM Housing, and it's called Property Start. And we basically specialize in assisting people in getting planning permits, which involves, having a town planner and architect on staff, where we actually produce all the planning permit drawings, all the documentation, right up to submission to the council, and if need be, all the requests that we get from the council, incorporating and getting to the point of getting a planning permit. But myself, I've been involved in property development for many years. I'm an IT person by trade, but I've been involved in developing software for many large developers, mainly residential developers. So my knowledge is basically limited to residential building, and I've held a builder's license as well. So I've built a lot of houses as well. So some of this information I'm going to share with you is based on my personal experiences and my personal observations. So if we get into it, the first thing is why develop property. And simply, if you compare property development, property investment, is basically when you develop the property, you end up owning the same property, but with a built-in equity. So in other words, when you go through the process of developing the property yourself, you cut down obviously the developer's margin, and if you hold on to that property, the selling cost, etc., and at the completion of the development, you end up owning that same property that would ordinarily be worth, say, $1 million. You would have spent $800,000 and instantly create an equity of $200,000. And this would allow you to actually utilize the equity that you created in that and move on to your next project. And by being a property developer, is you actually more in charge of what the final outcome is. As opposed to if you compare with property investment, you have to obviously do your research, find the growth corridor, find the right suburb, find the right street, find the right house, and then hope for the market to move the right way. So there's a lot of what ifs and a lot of uncertainty where you just do an investment. But if you want to build up your portfolio, in my opinion, the best thing to do is to develop the property. Then at the end of the actual development, you own the property and you know that you have created that equity in the property, you can move on to it. So what we want to do tonight is we put together a 7-point checklist to get the best result is for your development project, particularly when you're talking about selling off the plan. And I don't know if you attended our previous sections, selling off the plan is one of the stages of the property development. So the first thing, obviously, is why would people, sell off the plan? Because the easy thing to do is to go ahead and build it, have it all ready, and then put it on the market, and then basically, wait for the market to respond and to purchase the existing property. And many real estate agents would actually prefer that, because you would actually produce the product, it's ready there. Mostly what they do is they roll up, at the open inspection, they put the little board there, open inspection, stand in front of the property with a bit of paper, and people walk in and say, that's the property. They walk in, say any questions, I'll call you back, and that's all they do. And that's quite easy for them, because you've done all the work and you invest all the money. But there are obviously risks associated with that. The longer that property stays on the market, the longer it costs you. And if you've priced it incorrectly, or if the market moves in a certain way, it's very detrimental. So what we're saying is it's better to try and sell that property off the plan before you start the development. I mean, you still will develop it, you will still produce the final product, but a lot of the developers would actually sell it off the plan. And why they would do that? The first thing is obviously to minimize the risk. And to minimize the risk, the first thing they would do is validate the product. So if you try and sell it off the plan, you would quickly get a response from the market whether that area likes that product. In other words, obviously you've done your research, you've done your analysis, you've checked the demographic, you know what population lives there, you've got the builder, you've got your fixed price, you've applied your margin, you've come up with the price, and you put it up, and obviously you're going to get feedback from the market. And they might say, look, it's double story, we don't want double stories here, it's predominantly, a single story, or maybe you priced it incorrectly. So before you even construct, just offering to the market at that stage, you can quickly see if the product is right, fits in with that particular area, and whether you priced it correctly. And the third thing is, when you sell it off the plan, you actually satisfy the financial requirements with the banks. Although you don't get to see any of that money, like if I was to buy your property off the plan, I'll put a deposit of 10%, and that goes into some lawyer's trust account, and the developer doesn't see any of that money, but it helps the developer to get the finance from the bank, because and also for your own security, you know that the product is sold, so you can possibly get on with your next project rather than worrying it being on the market for so long, and then the real estate agent coming back and saying, well, we can't sell it for this price, and let's look at reducing the cost. Or I've seen some other examples. There was an instance where some clients of ours decided to do a development in Brighton area, and all the feasibility indicated that they had to do 3 townhouses in that particular street in that area, and they couldn't get the permit for 3, so they went for 2. And then they sat on it for 4 years, they couldn't sell it, eventually they sold it, and at the end of the day, they couldn't work out whether the project was profitable or the market just moved up and it caught up with the price that they wanted to sell, because they sat on it for so long, and all that effort they put in, I'm not sure whether they got paid for their efforts. So, and this is what we're saying is why you should sell it off the plan, is these 3 main points. There are obviously other advantages as well, but the first thing would be to minimize the risk. Now, this is obviously for you to say, okay, I've determined, okay, I've decided this is why I should be selling it off the plan. But the next slide I'm going to talk about is how to sell it, and why should the buyer buy your property off the plan. So the first thing is, when you're offering a property off the plan, this is the benefit to the buyer. The first thing, there's 2 types of buyers that will buy your development. There's the investors and owner-occupiers. And they're all looking for, obviously, for, value for money. And whether the investors or, because the competition there from your off-the-plan project is either existing houses or units or existing brand new developments. So you're competing against those. And you have to offer something that is going to compel the buyer to buy yours, as opposed to an established house or already built brand new house. So what are the compelling reasons? Why should I buy something that doesn't exist? Because off the plan, it means it's a concept. It doesn't exist. So you have to convince me, and I have to feel comfortable, and I have to be compelled to say, okay, that makes sense. I'm going to buy it off the plan because. And these are the reasons. The first thing is a stamp duty saving. And interestingly enough, this stamp duty savings is only offered in Victoria. I thought it was Australia-wide, but talking to some legal people, the stamp duty saving is offered only to Victoria. And basically what it means is, when you buy, say, a block of land, say roundabout figures, $750,000, you split into 3, and then you're going to build, units on it, and say the final product costs $650,000. Now, if it's a finished product, you pay the stamp duty on $650,000, which is approximately, I think, 6% of the $650,000. But if you buy it off the plan, you pay the stamp duty only on the unimproved value of the land, which is approximately a third of the cost of the land. So you only pay the stamp duty on $250,000, and not the, if it was to be sold, say, for 600, so you don't pay the stamp duty on $300,000, but only on the 250. So even in that example, the stamp duty already represents the savings of approximately $18,000 to $20,000, even on a $600,000 project, because you're only paying the stamp duty on the land. Even costs like getting a town planning permit, all the subdivision costs, all the construction costs, they're exempt from stamp duty. The only time you pay stamp duty is on the actual cost of the land. And I think the reason the Victorian government does that is to encourage people doing development. So that would be one of the compelling reasons. The other compelling reason is a brand new house, you get significant depreciation benefits. This is to assist you with your tax minimization, because a brand new house you can depreciate much more than an existing house. And the last thing is the maintenance. When you have an already existing house, you rent it out, invariably you need a plumber, you need carpenters, things don't work, appliances, so you're continuously maintaining it because it's tight. But with a brand new house, one of the compelling reasons will be the maintenance free, because it's brand new, all the appliances are brand new, they come in with manufacturer's guarantees. So if anything goes wrong, the manufacturer will replace it at least for 12 months or 2 years or 5 years, depending what it is. And also it comes in with a 7-year builder's guarantee. So if there are any defects, etc., the builder will come and fix it, which you don't get it when you're buying an old second-hand house. So that's some of the benefits. The other thing you should do is to show the potential buyer what is the return on his investment. And what I've done here is I just looked at Clayton South in this instance. And in Clayton South, and I've only looked at the units, not houses. And the capital growth in Clayton South for units is 13.92%. The gross rental yield is 4.5%. And also the other thing you've got to do is comparable sales, to convince or to show the potential buyers what they're buying is basically what is selling in that area. And just looking at that, 4.5%, it's already better than having your money in the bank, and 13.92%, that's the icing on the cake. So all we try here is to make it compelling for the buyer to buy your property off the plan. And obviously, this will be part of the research that you've done up front. So the next thing you should look at is when you're selling off the plan is some of the discounts you might offer. So obviously when you've done, you got your fixed price from your builder, you know all the costs, and you applied your margin, obviously you have some fat there, so you might have some discount that you can offer, so you have to have that in mind. The other option some of the developers do, and developers like the Metricons and Henleys and Carlas, they got it down to fine art because they all sell off the plan. If you look at what Metricon does, they build 5,000 houses, they sell it all off the plan. And these are the sort of things that they do. And what we're trying to do is to have a look at some of the, I was going to say tricks, but some of the procedures and some of the things they use to make it compelling for people to buy, something that doesn't exist. So these are the sort of things we would do. So some of the offers. See, some people would prefer not to get a discount, but get an offer. And by that, what I mean, say for example, I've got a deposit, and that's all I have. Now I have to come up with the legals possibly. Maybe I want to spend some more money on something else unforeseen. So it's better for you to offer a cashback rather than giving a discount. Because if you lower the price of the product, it doesn't really help me. Because if I need another $10,000 to make that deal, well, I need $10,000. If you drop the price, I still need the $10,000 cash. Because what some of the developers do is they actually give the client a cashback. You still get paid that $10,000 anyway. It's part of the price of the house. But the buyer will end up getting it from the bank and pay it off within the next 10, 20 years. So that's another compelling reason that some of the developers use when they sell it off the plan. And also the other thing you've got to consider as part of your pricing strategy is how many days you're going to leave it on the market. Like if you advertise, if you get the real estate agent, you say, okay, I'm going to have it there on the market for 90 days. Once the time is up, you got to make the decision of what to do. I mean, if it sells very quickly, obviously maybe you made the right decision, the price is right and the place is right and everything is correct, or maybe you underpriced it. But if it stays on the market for too long, well, at least you know there's something and there's no point of continuing going and developing. And I can assure you, the real estate agents will push you to go ahead and build it because it's easier once the product is there, it's more tangible, people can feel it. But it's a mistake. I mean, you got to find out what the fundamental mistake is. Why didn't it sell? I mean, if you said, I wanted to stay on the market for 90 days and sell it, it didn't sell, it's better to go back and review, and you're in a position to do that because you haven't started building. Maybe you can reduce the size of it, maybe you increase the size of it, maybe you can change some of the inclusions, maybe you can renegotiate with a builder, and then go back on the market. So at this stage, what we're saying is you're in a position to do something about it. Whereas if you compare it to the fact where you already built it, I mean, the only thing you can do then is just drop the price and lose money. So once you've done that, the next thing we suggest you do is come up with a sales plan. And I'm sorry for I'm just using these headings just as a loose sort of a thing. I mean, a purist might argue that sales plan means something else, but I'm just using it loosely to just group these ideas together. So the first thing would be to appoint a real estate agent, because some people try and do it themselves, but I think that's a mistake. You should get a real estate agent, and particularly a real estate agent who specializes in selling it off the plan, not any real estate agent, because it's a different type of sell. Because, normally when there's an existing house, it's there, but when you're selling something that doesn't exist, it's a different specialization. And it's easy to do. If you go onto realestate.com.au and just type in, off the plan, you'll see the real estate agents that come up, and these are the people you should deal with, not any real estate agent. Because they have the experience, they have sold off the plan, they know how to deal with objections and all that sort of thing. So, and the other important thing with the real estate agent is they have the offices, they have the infrastructure, and they can accommodate the customers' requests, to sit down and explain things. And it's a mistake, trying to do it yourself. I've seen people that try and do it themselves, and it doesn't come across, as professional as a real estate agent would do. So even though they charge 2 or 3%, I think it's worth it. It's worth doing it. The next thing to do is see if they've got a display house, or you get access to some of the previous work they've done. Because when I was doing building, most of the building that I've done was off the plan. And I can assure you, in every case, the customer wanted to see something that I've done before. They would never sign a contract without seeing something that I've done before. And it's always useful to show them your previous work. They would walk in, have a look at what the finishes are. And particularly it's useful if the builder that you're going to engage has got a display house. So they can go there, walk through, and they can actually feel and see what the product is going to look finally. Because again, it's very important because you're selling something that doesn't exist. And you've got to show them and provide all the necessary information for them to feel comfortable that what they're getting into is that they made the right decision. And the last thing is obviously you with your real estate agent prepare a contract of sale. And a contract of sale, I've got some examples here if anybody's interested to have a look at it later on. It's basically, it's similar to a contract that you would see when you buy an existing house. Except in here you would have all the drawings and the specifications included in it because the house doesn't exist per se. So you have your normal section 32 which describes all the details of the land, but then you'll have all the drawings, the detailed drawings, working drawings of the actual property that you're going to build. So that forms part of the contract that the client will sign. And one of the last things is to prepare a sales brochure, and a sales brochure should look very similar to what the people are used to. So this is a, for example, this is a sales brochure that you will see, you know, for an existing house. And obviously, because that house doesn't exist, you get the architect to produce very realistic impressions, and then go to that builder's display or existing house and take some pictures, or send a professional photographer, of course, to take the pictures and include that as part of the sales brochure here. And at the back of it, they have the floor plan. And basically, the last thing is to have a killer description of the product, which describe what the product is and all the compelling reasons why I should buy this. And the last thing I want to talk about, once you know the client has committed and signed a contract and paid the deposit, which goes into the trust account, is to keep, well, basically, you know, provide, you know, some clients will come in and they might want to upgrade your standard inclusions. So you might have allowed, you know, for say laminated cabinets, etc. They might want to upgrade it and have granite, you know, granite bench tops, etc. You might have allowed for normal tiles, but they want to change it to marble or granite. And there are reasons why people would do it. I mean, if it's an owner-occupier, they might want to, you know, spend a little bit more money and have better finishes. And if it's an investor, they might look at the wear and tear and say, look, if I put a more expensive, you know, granite, it will last longer, so I don't have to worry about replacing the bench tops, etc. But to some limited, I'm not saying, you know, give them a big option, because the minute you give them a large option of selections, then they can't make up their mind. So give them 2 or 3 small options of, you know, of upgrades. Similarly with the color selections, from building houses before, I found this was the most difficult thing for people to do. As part of town planning, you get some of the colors, you know, imposed on you by the council, but the internal, yeah, like the color of the internal walls or the color of the internal kitchens, I found people always struggle with that because they can't visualize it. And it's always good to have some schemes, and it always be useful to have a consultant, either color consultant or interior designer, that will sit down and help them with it. Because if you leave it up to them, they can't make up their mind. You know, you send them to like Dulux shop, and there's so many colors, there's so many options, it confuses them more. So just leave, you know, have 2 or 3 color schemes they can choose from, and have a color consultant that can explain why these colors work together. And the last thing is to keep the buyer that bought your property off the plan informed every step of the way. So as soon as the stage 1 is complete, the pictures, email it to them, send it to them. Once the frame is up, and these are the major parts of the construction. It's the base, the frame, lock up and fixing. So keep them informed, make sure that they're part of the process, and that's about it. That's the name of the company. If anybody's got any questions. Yes?
To sell off the plan,
Yes?
do you have to complete the subdivision process first?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Because but you have to have the permit.
The permit to build, or the land surveyor already broke down the 3 lots?
No, you don't have to break it up.
Okay.
But you have to have the permit to build. You can break it up at the end.
So at the time of the contract, it doesn't need to
No.
reflect? Okay.
No. But you have to have the permit, you have to have the plans, the working drawings. You possibly you would have your builders, you know, working drawings.
Yeah.
But you do this. You can do the subdivision right at the end. Some people do it up front, and there's a reason for that, because some of the banks get nervous. Like if you're a developer and I'm the bank, you come in and say, look, I've got a $2 million project, and there's, you know, 3 townhouses on it. Now, if anything goes wrong, I've got to find another person who's going to come in on a $2 million project. So sometimes banks will insist that you actually subdivide it, because then there are 3 individual titles. So if anything goes wrong, they can you know, realize, or they can put it on the market as 3 different titles, as opposed to 1 big development. But this came about after the financial crisis. I think before that, the rule was you just develop it and then subdivide at the end.
I actually sold two on the one block without a subdivision.
without a subdivision.
I own both, but I sold both to one purchaser, so.
Yeah, well, if the purchaser is not intending to sell or sell on, and they're going to keep it and rent it, and then they keep it for their kids or their grandchildren, whatever, they might not because the only time you need to subdivide is when you actually sell it as an entity and the title. You know, you have to exchange the title for money.
Yeah, hence my question.
Yeah.
Earlier when you're signing a contract on a off the plan, does it need to be, that's hence my question.
Yeah. No, you can do it later.
Okay.
That's subject to subdivision.
Yeah, of course, because of the settlement. There'd be two settlements. I mean, one would be after you complete it, after the builder completes the construction. After that stage will be what they call this practical completion inspection, when you or the client will go in and just accept it. So that's like, and then there's the actual settlement when the titles exchange. So when you break it. But after this stage, you get a certificate of occupancy. You can move in, basically.
A couple of other points about incentives to buy off the plan.
Yes, I'll go back to that.
Yeah.
Which slide was that?
Deposit bond or bank guarantee is accepted with some developers, and no progress payments.
Yes.
Settlement whenever, 2015, 16. That's an incentive for a lot of people.
Of course, because what happens here is you're actually locking in a price of a house today, and you're not going to settle until 2015. That gives you enough time to save up a little bit more. I'm not sure about the bank guarantee. Bank guarantee for the deposit or the whole thing?
For the deposit. We actually got projects with just accepting bank guarantee at the moment. Settlement 2015. And of course the other incentives where they pay this up to 1,000 for the stamp duty. Sorry, for the legal costs and the stamp duty.
Yeah, you pay the legal costs.
And 5-year rental guarantee. This is for investors.
Yeah, that's another good incentive, is a rental. If you're going to use their property as a, maybe not as a display, but as something, as something's previous work, which I've done before, is you give them something like a monthly allowance or something, a few $100s a month, but it gives you access to the property. So if you've got, somebody else who's interested, you can go back and say, well, because as opposed to having a display house, which is hundreds of thousands of dollars and how many thousands of dollars a month to maintain, is that sort of thing. A little bit of money you pay them, a month.
Oh, that's a slightly different system where there's a lease back for 8% or whatever the amount.
But it's not a full lease; it's just an access.
No, that's 100% lease,
Yes.
which you got 100% access for the first 2 or 3 years. But this is a slightly different scenario. This is with apartments. So if once you purchase and you take possession 2015, if you can't get a tenant within that first 5 years, even for a short period of time, they'll give you the rental guarantee, but it's only at 5%, which is bank rate. So that's how they work that one.
I'll add that in.
Oh, look, it's only...
Because from the investor's point of view, it makes sense, yeah.
Absolutely.
Because if the investor is intending to invest and you guarantee that you will, yeah. If they can't get a potential renter, then you will rent it. Which is good for both parties anyway. His property gets rented and you're using it as a display. You can set up a temporary office there. So it works for both parties. Yeah.